Welcome everyone to last week this morning. I have to apologize. I have been out of commission for 2 weeks. I've been on vacation, which has been fabulous. It's summertime. My kids are off school, so it was really great to spend some time with my family. But that being said, I missed a lot, Markham. You were busy while I was away. And so we're going to kind of review some of the, you know, big stories that you covered. I really want to just dive right into Daniel Smith's energy policies. And, let's start there. Maybe we can kind of start in Alberta and work our way out to talk about how this is impacting, obviously Albertans, Canadians, and where we fit into the rest of the world.
What you're referring to is a story I did comparing Alberta energy policies to those of Saudi Arabia, which has a strategy called Vision 2030. I think they adopted around 2020. And the point here is that the Premier Danielle Smith talks about the Saudis, uses Saudi language around oil, the future of oil, all the time. She's all in on the OPEC view of oil and gas, particularly oil, which is basically that there's going to be a huge growth in demand from now until 2050, then a long plateau. Essentially, oil is here for, years and decades.
Right.
And so that's part of where the Alberta and Saudi Arabia are consistent. Where they agree. But there's two other parts to the Vision 2030 strategy that she completely ignores and are at odds with what she does. So if the Saudis are so great on oil, why are they investing so much in renewable energy? Wind, solar, hydrogen. Why are they investing so much in materials, in turning oil into chemicals, in turning oil into advanced materials? And on those two fronts, Alberta is doing almost nothing. We've seen Alberta already kneecap wind and solar started with the moratorium in 2023, and then
Yeah.
a number of new rules in the spring of 2024. And I just had Jason Wang from the Pembina Institute on talking about how 11 gigawatts of planned renewables investment has just fallen off the table because of those rule changes. So on the one hand, she cherry picks the support for oil and then ignores these other two parts of the Saudi vision, which is the Saudis think that materials and chemicals plus renewable energy are a business opportunity. They see it very positively, and they see an opportunity here because they believe in long-term growth of oil to add to. It's additive, not
Yeah.
substituting. Now, I disagree with them on that point, but nevertheless, the key takeaway here is the Saudis are investing hundreds of billions of dollars in this new vision because they see renewable electricity and materials and chemicals as the economy of the future. And Alberta, even though Alberta has the second largest petrochemical complex in North America, behind only Texas and Louisiana, does not share that. And Alberta has the best renewable energy, wind and solar resources in Canada. So the
Yeah.
opportunities available to Alberta are exactly the same or very similar to those of Saudi Arabia, and Alberta refuses to acknowledge that and take advantage of them. That was my argument.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you can see it quite clearly that, Alberta wants to bury their heads in the sand when it comes to renewables. And you're seeing other, basically the biggest oil producers in the world running these things in parallel and investing in them using kind of the cash cow, if you will, of oil production while we're still, selling and making and using a lot of oil and figuring out what's next. And I think that's kind of what stands out for me is what is Alberta's plan for the future? These other oil producers are making a plan, are testing the waters in these different things. And I mean, you did talk about, solar, but they're doing these, architectural things around like that, that new city, the line that they're building and how that's going to work and how it's going to be powered. And it's not on oil and gas. So yeah, for me, that's, really stood out for me and led me right into the next video I really enjoyed, which was the cheap solar big disruptions. Where you looked into how electrification used to be thinking, okay, yeah, that's nice to have, and now electrification is, reshaping the global economy.
I had some great guests on over the last 2 weeks. You really missed out on that. You have to go back
I
and watch MC. Michael Liebrick is a global superstar in the energy field. He founded Bloomberg New Energy Finance back in, I think it was 2009 or something, and he's asked to consult with and speak to groups all over and companies all over the globe. Greg Nemeth is a professor at the University of Wisconsin, a Canadian boy actually from Quebec. And he's written a book about how solar became so cheap and now is disruptive. And he's a very articulate voice for, explains how it happens. But the key takeaway here, and I can't say this enough because it came up during the interviews, is this isn't about supply. Canada, when it thinks about renewables, always thinks about, oh my God, we need wind and solar. We need to install more because we need to lower our emissions. That's not what this is about. We've had electricity for 150 years. We have a great power grid. It's not about supply. It's that we have figured out, and by we I mean the human race, because this has really been driven by China over the last 10 years. We have figured out how to electrify demand. That is the Rubicon that we have crossed. And so on the transportation side, we now electrify. We have electric cars and electric trucks and electric buses and electric two and three wheelers and electric
Yeah.
trains. And now we're getting into electric delivery vans and electric long haul trucking and on and on. And this is happening in China and in Asia, in Europe, outside of North America. So, in Canada, we sit here and go, well, nothing's happening, right? Because it's not happening here, therefore it can't happen anywhere else in the world. It is happening in the rest of the world. We are electrifying demand, and by electrifying demand, we then will the global economy will reduce demand for the oil and gas that powers Alberta's economy, and it's coming a lot quicker than Alberta is willing to admit. And so the stop focusing on stories about wind and solar and it's electric vehicles and heat pumps and industrial processes like steel making and hydrogen to displace fossil fuels in industrial processes. Those are the real disruptive stories, the disruptive technologies. And they're kind of industrial. A lot of them aren't very sexy, but it's the kind of stuff we cover at Energy Media. And you do enough of those interviews with people like Liebrick and Nemeth, and you begin to realize just how profoundly the global economy is beginning to change.
Well, and I think the key aspect you're hitting on here is demand. We keep saying, let's build a pipeline out to the West Coast, and, we build it and the customers will come, and that's just not the case. If China and Southeast Asia are electrifying so fast, their demand for oil and gas naturally is going to go down. And so, if the demand for electricity is going up, then the loser here is going to be whatever kind of gas we're talking about.
I did a story about countries in Asia, and I used Malaysia as the example, that have adopted policies to deliberately displace oil and gas using electric technologies. And the reason they're doing this is because uh, oil and gas importers have huge, enormous bills for those. For example, China alone imports about $325 billion of oil every year, mostly for transportation, but also some for petrochemicals. And Malaysia imports $13 billion, it's a much smaller and poorer economy. And they would prefer to bulk up their power system, with cheap Chinese solar power panels and batteries, and so expand their power sector with clean renewable energy, and then on the demand side, buy cheap Chinese EVs, cheap Chinese heat pumps, and so on, and reduce the amount they don't want to spend their valuable foreign currency on oil and gas imports. And that China has begun that process. Other Asian governments, including Malaysia, have begun that process, and that spells bad news for demand for Canadian oil and gas. And it's one of the reasons why I don't believe the bullish forecasts for LNG.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's just this trend that businesses are going to invest in their own solar systems, their own batteries, and the what they can't get from the grid, they're just generate themselves. That's one of the trends, that you brought up last week in one of your interviews, at least. And I think, th this leads into our next story when we're talking about EV mandates. I mean, we're talking about EVs being one of the drivers of this, this demand that's decreasing for oil and gas. And so we have our own mandates here in Canada. And what are we doing with the EV industry here? This isn't just about cutting emissions. This is also about, are we going to be able to build an industry here that's going to generate jobs and so on?
Exactly right. And the point I made in the stories I did was that the right now we primarily, not 100%, but primarily view electrification of transportation as a means of cutting emissions.
Yeah,
And I don't think, the public support for climate policies like the carbon tax go up and down, right? And I think we've pretty much reached the limit of what we can do by relying on climate policy. But if we look at this as an economic opportunity to say, okay, we're going to electrify our auto fleet. And again, not just cars and light cars and trucks, but also medium duty and heavy duty,
yeah,
so that's a lot of vehicles. We buy about 2 million vehicles a year in Canada, and we make 1.3 million in Ontario. So the opportunity for us, if we're going to mandate the electrification of our light duty fleet, then how many of those EVs can we manufacture at home? And
yeah,
what policies are required to give them a leg up to get them established? Maybe it's subsidies, maybe it's some other kind of industrial policy. I mean, we're not having the debate, so it's hard to say what could be used. But there are plenty of policy instruments that we could choose from, and it's a strategic, it's a flip of how we think about it, going from climate to strategic economic development, strategic economic diversification. And this, the Chinese have done this. This is one of the reasons why uh, their electric technology sector has flourished, is because they're adopting solar at scale, enormous scale. They're building enormous EV manufacturing capacity, heat pump manufacturing capacity. And so on the one hand, they subsidize the adoption of solar panels, and then on the other hand, they subsidize and help promote the technologies that consume that
yeah.
electricity. And the
Mhm.
two of them work together. So one scales up and then the other scales up. There's a lesson to be learned for Canada. I'm not saying we have to do it exactly the way the Chinese do it, but that basic principle of investing in both the supply side and the demand side to attract investment and create jobs, I think is a good one.
I mean, we've talked a lot about industrial policy over the last little while, and I mean, that's been one of my hopes with Carney and this new bill that's coming out, is that there is going to be, I'm not saying an industrial policy, but maybe a shift of focus to some type of national initiative where there's some type of coming together, if you will, into exactly what you're talking about, creating a supply chain, creating those good paying jobs, and having manufacturing right here at home. I think that for me, that's what gets me pretty excited. And but we have to say that is a stark difference from what we're doing right now.
Exactly. And this Canada stands on the precipice of an opportunity that we haven't had in maybe since World War II. And that opportunity is as the global energy system shifts. So we're both we're investing in clean energy technologies, which basically wind and solar, hydro and nuclear. As we expand that, and then we're expanding on the demand side, there's an opportunity for Canada to move up the value chain. Instead of sending
Yeah.
raw logs from BC to China, we send mass timber. Instead of sending, raw oil down to American refineries, we turn it into carbon fiber or graphite or asphalt binder or some value added. And the time is now. The time to, and there was an announcement just today in Germany, where Mark Carney was. They've come up with an agreement around critical minerals, and there will be some processing in Canada. That's a really good start. I mean, it's in the very early stages. It's, basically a handshake agreement is what it amounts to, but it's a very, very good start. And how do we build on that then? Because it's only
Yeah.
up to the mid-cycle of the processing supply chain. How do we go all the way so that we're actually creating battery metals or battery cells? So there's lots of opportunity here, and the question is, will we capture that opportunity, move up the value chain, create more economic value and economic activity, support better, good paying jobs, or
Yeah.
will we simply do more of what we've done in the past and export to a few additional customers like Germany, and a few additional commodities like critical minerals and lithium, uh, and just do what we've always done, be hewers of wood and drawers of water. Instead, now we'll be hewers of critical minerals and hewers of lithium. But
Yeah.
the essential structure of the economy doesn't change. Which one is it going to be? And I would like to see Canada seize this opportunity and move forward aggressively with it to add more value.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, take this opportunity to pivot while we still have, while we're still kind of leading or not leading, but we still have this opportunity to pivot now, create that industry as the other industry kind of dies out, or, so people have somewhere to go to get those good middle class paying jobs. That's what I'm always thinking about. We've got mortgages to pay, and how are we going to do that? Well, and that leads me into my final story that kind of hit me is, a few weeks ago, we talked about the Forever Canada movement. We talked about this grassroots petition that's been collecting signatures that wants to pause the separatism talks or stop it. And yeah, I found that the recent interview with Tomek Lukazik really, really kind of, I like his perspective. It seems that the movement has got a lot of momentum at the moment.
Yeah, you're talking about the Forever Canadian movement that the Thomas started and is now blossomed into something that's kind of a
Much more.
grassroots movement. And
Yeah,
and he explained it much better than I can explain it. But essentially, the question will become, if there's a referendum on separation in Alberta, what is the question? And will it be a fuzzy question that confuses people, and like the Brexit question, or
right.
will it be a very clear, concise question? Under Alberta legislation, the first question in the door is the one that Elections Alberta considers. And so Thomas got his in before the separatists got theirs in. He kind
Right.
of, he snookered them a little bit, right? So the next stage of the process is he has to go out. The supporters of that question have to go out and get almost 300,000 signatures, and they can't be, like done online. You can't do it on a website.
Yeah.
It has to be done on paper, in person. It has to be verified. The people who are the signature collectors have to be verified by Elections Canada. It's quite rigorous, and they've only got 90 days to get 300,000 signatures. And what that's done is the folks who oppose separation and are big fan, are Canadians first, have come out en masse. They get, they set up a booth someplace, and next thing you know, there's a lineup of 100 people waiting to sign the petition. Albertans are really showing their red and white, allegiances. It's heartening to
Right.
see, and it looks. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that they're going to make it, because this gives me hope as a Canadian that the support for the country is greater in Alberta than we thought.
Yeah, and I mean, I love I'm all for a good news story. This one is a good news story on my part. You know, we see so many things that are negative in the news, and it's nice to see something that brings a little bit of hope. And also, for me, I can connect with it. That's how I feel about Canada. I want Canada to stay together. I was around when the Quebec referendum happened. I was a young person jumping on a bus to go there, and chant with the no people. And I just think, this is an important moment. And I like to see I can connect with other Canadians and that we share these same values, even though we're obviously it's a massive country with a lot of differences along the way.
I want to make a
Um,
point about that,
yeah,
MC, if you don't mind. Thomas Lukaszuk is a bit of a polarizing figure because he was the deputy premier under Premier Alison Redford, almost 15 years ago, when she was the progressive conservative premier. There's lots of
yeah,
people who don't like Thomas and don't like his politics. He's active on social media, and he still gets pushback. But on this point, it rises above partisan politics. And one of the things, how many times have you heard me say that whether civilization rises or falls when it's faced with an existential challenge depends
hmm
on the quality of its leadership? And so I was so pleased to see a political leader in Alberta rise up to and meet this occasion and get things
agree.
organized, have the right ideas, be able to rally people, get people organized. So hats off to Thomas because
Yeah,
I haven't seen a lot of others do it. Now we've got a former Premier Ed Stelmach endorsed Forever Canadian, and forever-canadian.ca is where you can go to get more information. And if you want to, collect, if you want to be a petition signature collector or you want to sign the petition, go there to the website and you'll get the information you need. But that leadership that he started the ball rolling is invaluable.
yeah, and I mean, we'd love to see more leaders like that getting things going in Canada for sure. I want to say, if you made it this far through our chat today, you must like our content. So if you could definitely subscribe to our channel, get over there, follow us on all the social media platforms, on Facebook as well, and remember to subscribe. We also have a membership on YouTube, so if you could support us financially we would greatly appreciate that as well. And I think that's about it. We've got a lot more exciting content coming out this week. And, we'll see you same time, same place next week.
We'll look forward to it.
Take care, everyone.